My name is John, and I never imagined that one fateful night at Moonlight Motel would forever change my life. It was an old, rundown place that exuded a weird atmosphere, but it was the only lodging option on a long stretch of highway during my cross-country road trip. Little did I know what terrifying events awaited me that night. As I pulled into the motel's parking lot, I noticed how dimly lit it was, with only a flickering neon sign that read Moonlight Motel. Reluctantly, I checked in with the owner, an elderly man with a sinister grin. He seemed unfriendly and kept staring at me with unsettling eyes. Ignoring my instincts, I made my way to my room, which was located at the far end of the motel. The hallway was dark and damp, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The room itself was no better, with a musty smell that filled the air. I tried to shake off my unease and settled into bed. But as the night wore on, strange occurrences started happening. The television turned on by itself, playing static and eerie whispers. I checked the remote, but it was nowhere to be found. Terrified, I decided to ignore it and tried to sleep. As I drifted off, I was jolted awake by the sound of footsteps outside my door. Fear gripped me as the footsteps grew louder and closer. I hesitated to look through the peephole, but curiosity got the better of me. To my horror, there was no one there, but the footsteps persisted, echoing down the hallway. With my heart pounding, I called the front desk, only to receive a garbled response from the other end. Panic consumed me as I felt trapped and alone. I contemplated leaving immediately, but my car was parked at the far end of the lot, and I didn't want to risk running into whoever or whatever was haunting this place. Hours seemed to drag on as I anxiously awaited the first light of dawn. But just as the first rays of sunlight crept through the curtains, the room suddenly went pitch black. The power had gone out, leaving me in complete darkness. Fearful of encountering something sinister in the shadows, I fumbled for my phone to use its flashlight. When the light finally illuminated the room, I saw a figure standing in the corner. It was a man, but his face was obscured by shadows. He wore a tattered suit, and his eyes glowed with an unnatural intensity. I froze, unable to move or speak as the man slowly approached me, his footsteps echoing with an otherworldly resonance. "Hello, John," he said, his voice a chilling whisper. "You shouldn't have come here." I mustered the courage to ask, "Who are you? What do you want?" His sinister grin widened, revealing sharp yellow teeth. "I am the keeper of this place, and you, my dear guest, are never leaving." With that, he lunged at me, and I screamed, stumbling backward and crashing through the window. The impact left me dazed, but the fear in me pushed me to my feet, and I sprinted towards my car, never looking back. As I drove away from the Moonlight Motel,
I grew up on the vast, desolate lands of the Navajo Reservation, where stories of the skinwalker were passed down from each generation. My grandparents, who were deeply rooted in Navajo traditions, warned me about the evil shapeshifter that lurked in the darkness, waiting for unsuspecting prey. They spoke of its ability to take the form of animals or even mimic the appearance of loved ones. They told me encounters with a skinwalker brought misfortune and a dreadful curse. I walked home from my friend's house. A bone-chilling wind swept through the canyons. I quickened my pace, feeling a pair of eyes upon me. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of a coyote, but something felt terribly off. Its movements were unnaturally human-like, and a sense of dread washed over me. I clutched the protective amulet given to me by my grandmother, desperately hoping it would be enough to ward off the malevolent creature. My heart pounded in my chest as I silently prayed for protection. But my prayers went unanswered as the coyote abruptly stood on its hind legs, its form elongating and contorting into that of a grotesque human-like figure. Terror gripped me as I realized I was face to face with the dreaded skinwalker. I could sense the darkness from the creature. I knew then that I had fallen victim to the skinwalker's curse. With a swift motion, the creature lunged toward me, its sharp claws reaching out to strike. Instinct took over, and I ran as fast as my legs could carry me. The skinwalker pursued me relentlessly, its inhuman speed closing the gap between us. Panic fueled my every step as I desperately sought an escape. In a stroke of luck, or perhaps divine intervention, I stumbled upon a cabin hidden within the rugged landscape. Knowing that the skinwalker could not enter sacred ground, I sought refuge within the cave's protective embrace. For what felt like an eternity, I huddled in the darkness, my heart pounding in my chest as the skinwalker circled the entrance, its rage manifesting in growls and guttural snarls. It sensed my presence, taunting me from just beyond the cabin. Hours turned into an agonizing wait, but the skinwalker eventually departed, vanishing into the night as mysteriously as it had appeared. As dawn broke, I got out, my body weary and battered, but my spirit unbroken. Since that fateful encounter, my life has been plagued by vivid nightmares, tormenting me with scenes of horror and despair. I wake up drenched in sweat, the images of the skinwalker's twisted visage haunting my waking hours as well. Every corner I turn, I am filled with an inexplicable dread, the constant sensation of being watched by unseen eyes. I can't help but feel as though the skinwalker's curse has woven its way into the very fabric of my existence, a reminder that evil lurks in the shadows, waiting for the opportune moment to strike.
The storm was fierce outside as my friends and I gathered in my family's old house. We had planned a fun sleepover filled with laughter and excitement, but as the storm grew stronger, we felt a sense of unease. We had heard rumors about a spooky presence in the house, a woman in a torn nightgown trapped and tormented. We didn't take it seriously, thinking it was just a local legend. Little did we know that we would soon face the terrifying truth. As night fell and the storm intensified, we gathered in the dimly lit living room, seeking comfort in each other's company. The power went out, leaving us in darkness. The room became quiet except for the distant sound of the wind. Nervous laughter turned into uneasy silence as we sat in the dark. The absence of light made the house feel eerie, as if something ancient lurked in the shadows. We felt a chill in the air, giving us goosebumps. Whispers filled the air, faint but filled with an evil presence. We strained our ears to hear, trying to understand the language of the spirits that haunted the place. And then, in the darkness, a dim light appeared. A pale figure in a torn nightgown, her face twisted in pain. Her eyes glowed strangely, fixed on us with intensity. We were frozen with fear as she floated closer, moving in a ghostly way. The smell of decay filled the room, making it hard to breathe. We tried to scream and run, but something held us in place. With a voice filled with despair, she cursed us, using words that felt ancient and powerful. Terrifying images flooded our minds, threatening to drive us insane. The house shook violently, as if in the grip of an evil force. The walls seemed to close in, trapping us in a nightmare. We held on to each other, seeking comfort and strength in the chaos. As suddenly as it had started, the terror disappeared. The storm outside calmed, and the house fell silent. The woman in the nightgown was gone, leaving us with fear and a sense of loss. We emerged from that night changed forever. Our sleepover had become a horrifying experience, reminding us that some legends carry a kernel of truth. The house stood empty, haunted by the memory of the woman in the nightgown. Even now, When I pass by that house, I can't help but shudder. The echoes of that fateful night still linger within its walls, serving as a chilling reminder of the thin line between the world we know and the horrors that exist beyond.
I've always been fascinated by the supernatural, the unknown. So when my friends and I decided to spend a weekend in an old abandoned house rumored to be haunted, I couldn't resist. We had all heard about Bloody Mary, the vengeful spirit who appeared in the mirror when her name was called 3 times. Little did we know that our encounter with this folklore would be more terrifying than we imagined. The house was at the edge of a dense forest, its decaying facade giving us chills as we approached. The air was heavy with a sense of foreboding, but we were determined to uncover the secrets within. With flashlights in hand, we cautiously entered through the creaking front door, our hearts pounding with excitement and fear. The house was dark, with only our flashlights cutting through the gloom. It felt suffocating, as if the house held its breath, hiding its secrets. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, revealing glimpses of a forgotten past. We walked down narrow corridors, our footsteps echoing eerily on the wooden floor. As we reached the bathroom, the epicenter of the Bloody Mary legend, unease washed over us. The mirror stood tall, reflecting the flickering lights. Nervously, we formed a circle, our breaths shallow and quick. It was time to test the legend. Summoning our courage, we chanted, "Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary." Our voices trembling together, the room fell silent, growing colder. Suddenly, the mirror seemed to warp, as if a shadowy figure was emerging. Panic gripped us, but there was no turning back. In the dim room, we saw a ghostly figure forming in the mirror. Her pale, bloodied face stared back at us, her eyes filled with indescribable anguish. Her tangled hair framed her face like a macabre halo, and her lips were stained crimson, as if she had been feasting on blood. Fear paralyzed us as Bloody Mary stepped out of the mirror, casting darkness over the room. She glided towards us, slow but with an otherworldly grace. Desperation consumed us as we tried to escape, but the doors and windows had sealed shut mysteriously. Her anguished wails filled the room, growing louder and more piercing. The walls closed in, trapping us in a nightmare. We realized Bloody Mary was more than a legend. She was a malevolent force, punishing those foolish enough to summon her. One by one, my friends fell victim to her wrath. Their screams mixed with the vengeful spirit's wails. I was the last one, frozen with terror. Bloody Mary approached slowly, her bloodshot eyes fixed on mine. I closed my eyes, preparing for the worst. But then, silence engulfed the room. I opened my eyes, finding myself alone. The house was empty, and Bloody Mary had vanished. It was as if she had never been there. Gasping for breath and covered in sweat, I stumbled out of the house. Even now, I still hear her haunting cries and see her bloodied face in my nightmares. This encounter with Bloody Mary taught me a valuable lesson. Some legends should remain undisturbed, and the supernatural forces lurking in the shadows should never be underestimated.